It's allowed the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She's an architect behind the Undercover Architect, an online education business that teaches homeowners globally about what they need to know when designing a building or renovating their homes. None other than Miss Amelia Lee.
Hello, Daniel. Thank you for having me.
Welcome, welcome, Miss Amelia and Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Most definitely. So, as you said, I am an architect. I'm an architect by profession. And since mid 2014, I transitioned to having an online education business after decades working in architecture in various forms in private practice for a large development company, co-owning my own architectural practice for 5 years as well. And my family and I moved to a regional location in mid 2014. And at the time, I made the decision that I wanted to start a business and looked around for various opportunities. My kids were very little at the time, and I knew if I started an architectural practice, I'd be away from home a lot. And I thought about all of the knowledge and experience that I had, not only from my professional career, but also personally. My husband and I, we'd done 3 renovations of our own over a 12-year period. And I felt like it was just all being locked up in one-to-one relationships. And meanwhile, I was seeing loads of people having terrible experiences with their projects just because they didn't get the right information at the right time. And particularly women were stepping into a male-dominated industry and really struggling to know how to communicate, how to advocate for their needs and their wishes and their wants. And I just felt that we needed to level the playing field and help homeowners have a better experience and drive better outcomes in the industry. So Undercover Architect began as an online blog and quickly developed into an online education business. And we now have courses. We have our signature program, Home Method. I have the website with lots of resources on it, the podcast as well, which has got around 3 million downloads. And we have lots of fun, really helping people with expertise and experience to have much better outcomes in their projects, be able to enjoy the experience and create homes that truly suit them.
And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Amelia. Thank you. So tell us, is this your book, How to Design a Home, or is it a giveaway?
That's a giveaway. So that's a free e-guide. We have lots of resources on Undercover Architect's website, free downloads, a lot of podcast transcripts. But that How to Design a Home is definitely the starting point for most of the people that come in contact with Undercover Architect. And it helps you get clarity on what you need to do before you begin designing your home, whoever you're working with and wherever you're located.
Well, interesting, Miss Amelia, and thank you for sharing to the world. So today, let's talk about how to start your renovation or a new build with clarity and confidence. The dreams versus the daily. Before talking budgets or floor plans, how do you guide someone to articulate the feeling and daily experience they want their future home to provide? What the question uncover the true non-negotiable why behind the project?
That's a fantastic question, Daniel. And it's commonly where a lot of people don't realize is the best place to start. And it's a really important place to start so that you can begin your project with clarity. I really encourage people to become what we call design detectives in their own lives. So, this is borrowing from the profession. Architects and designers do walk around as an occupational hazard, really studying how people use spaces, how they interact with the spaces that they're in. And this can be both in your home, in other people's homes, and in public spaces as well. And start to look for clues of where things are working, where things might frustrate you, where things really are enjoyable and peaceful and calm, where you feel great in spaces and where you really struggle to not feel great. The spaces that we occupy really do impact our mood and well-being in a range of ways. And when you start to actually be really observant of this, you can gather a lot of intel about what's really going to drive great design outcomes in your own home. I think also thinking about where this project sits in your overall lifestyle goals as well. You really want to create a home, whether you're renovating or building, that's going to help support the kind of lifestyle you want to lead, both now and into the future. And it can be challenging because projects can sometimes take anywhere between 2 and 5 years to come to fruition. And if you're, parents with young kids, or you're moving into different stages of your life, say you're moving into, being empty nesters or something like that, where you're designing and what you're living for right now might not be where your home needs to be functioning, sort of 5, 10, 15 years into the future. And so, really thinking about what your overall goals are for your lifestyle, how you see your life panning out in the future, and also the finances of your life as well. You could be spending this money on anything, and you often forget that when you're renovating or building. It feels like it's the only thing that money is going to be dedicated towards. But it's important that you actually see a return on your investment. And that doesn't necessarily mean a financial return, but you do want to see that pay dividends in the life that it helps you lead. So, really thinking about those big picture goals, why you're doing this project, why now, what's important to you, what your priorities are, and how is this home going to align with the personal values that you have that might be around sustainability or peace and calm or organization, or certain things that you really want your everyday life to feel and look like, can then give you a place to return to. You're going to have to make thousands of decisions as you navigate your project. And so when you work out those big picture goals at the very beginning, it helps you have a place to come back to sanity check the decisions that you're making and ensure that things are in alignment with where you began this project and the goals that you had.
Miss Amelia, the word clarity is in your title. What is the most common source of confusion or vague thinking people have at the very start that inevitably leads to cost overruns and frustration later?
It's a really good question. I think that a lot of people get confused about what the process should actually look like. So
Mhm.
oftentimes people think their project is a little bit of research, a bit of design, and then it's mainly all about construction. And so they think then about how are they going to navigate construction, and who is the person that's going to help them make that happen. And that will be, then a lot of focus comes on the builder or the general contractor that's pretty much standing between kind of their dreams and their visions and the finished home that they're picturing. And so a lot of effort then goes into thinking about how you're going to spend your money during construction, who's the person that you're going to find to help you do that, how are you going to know that you can trust them, and what do you need to do to set that up well. There's actually 4 phases to every project, and whether you're doing a kitchen remodel or renovation or you're doing a multi-million dollar brand new build, these 4 phases exist in every single project, and they're pre-design, design, pre-build, and build. So I'll go through those again: pre-design, design, pre-build, and build. And interestingly, the success of your build phase actually gets set up with how well you travel through your pre-design, design, and pre-build phases. And there's so much that you can do as a homeowner and a client in those first 3 phases to be much more empowered and educated and informed about those first 3 phases, to have a voice in your project, to understand what your priorities are and how to drive those through the design process and your selections and the products and finishes, so that then the build phase actually can be a much lower stress process. You can be managing your budget far more effectively, and you can feel far more confident as you go onto site every day, knowing that you've set yourself up for success in that build phase. It just doesn't feel like this out of control thing, which is what a lot of people's experience of construction is.
For couples or families, how do you facilitate a conversation where everyone's dreams is non-negotiable, are heard and synthesized into a single coherent vision before engaging a professional?
It's really common for couples to struggle to get on the same page about their projects. I think that they say that in a relationship, renovating or building is one of the top 3 stresses in life. So, and and you'll often find that people will come at their projects with obviously different goals and also different ways of handling things. One partner might really struggle with difficult conversations. I find, speaking very generally and looking at heterosexual couples, it'll often be the woman that is driving most of the decision making. As with all other industries, in renovating and building, women are driving 80% of the purchasing decisions in the industry, but they're stepping into a male-dominated industry, and so it can be really common for the builder or tradespeople to only deal with that want to deal with the husband. And I've had that experience myself when we renovated our own homes. I'd stepped off project managing a very large project for a company I was working with, where it was overseeing 140 homes in an apartment building, and I'd gone on maternity leave, and we were navigating this renovation, and I was answering the door with a baby on my hip, and tradespeople were asking me where my husband was, and he would say, "What are you talking about? She's the architect." And it was really interesting and very eye-opening because they weren't turning up and seeing me as the architect, and some of the rubbish I would hear before we'd get to them realizing who I was and my profession made me really realize what a lot of people were dealing with. And I think that it's really important as a couple that you just be really understanding about who is going to be kind of really driving this, who's going to be the most invested partner. There will be one partner who probably dives into the detail and the nuts and bolts of the project far more than the other, and that you also spend time trying to get on the same page. One of the most key pieces of communication that you can have from a documentation point of view is your design brief. And a lot of people don't take the time to write one before they dive into their project. And it can be a really great way of actually sitting down, and whether you do it separately and then you bring it together and see where you've got crossovers and where you've got conflicts that you need to negotiate, or you try and do it together, it's really going through and setting out what are your goals and how do you want your project to travel, what do you want in your future home, and how do you want all of the pieces to come together. And it's not just about the list of rooms that you want, but how do you want each of those rooms to feel and to function? What do you want your role to be in the project? What are your expectations from the team that you're going to be working with? What are your main priorities and your deal breakers and your non-negotiables, and what are you willing to let go of? And every time I used to work with couples as an architect one-to-one, I would find that it was in understanding where they were both really holding on to things that were very important to them. We would start to dig and lift the layers. I remember one couple that I worked with, she was really attached to having a front veranda on the property. She really wanted a place where she could sit and look out at the street. And he just didn't understand why that was important. He thought it was a compromise on the privacy of their home. He didn't see that it was a really valuable addition to the home. Meanwhile, he wanted a really fantastic wine bar in the kitchen and wanted to be able to have a small bar area where he could make drinks. She didn't understand why that was important. But as he started to unpick for them both, they both have very personal stories about the significance of those things. For him, that was a thing that he kind of always wanted in a home. For her, she had very fond memories as a child of her mother sitting out on the front veranda and her spending time playing on one of those spaces as a child and being able to look out and see the cars going past on the street. And she wanted to share that kind of experience with her family and her small children. And I think once you start to get to the reasons behind these things are deal breakers for people, then as a couple, you can say, oh, actually, I understand why this is so personal for you. Our homes are incredibly personal expressions of us, our histories, nostalgia, what's significant to us. And so really kind of unpacking that. But you got to take the time to be able to do that before you obviously dive into, well, we want 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, 2 living areas, 2 car, all of those kinds of things.
How does someone translate the current lifestyle pain points like no room for family dinners or constant clutter into a proactive design belief that solves problems they have not even fully articulated yet?
Oh, Daniel, you're asking such fantastic questions. So
Thank you.
I think this is one of the really tricky things, because it can be very difficult, obviously, to envisage a future that you haven't lived yet, or
Yes.
even potentially understand is going to be a problem for you. And if you've got kids that are, toddlers, it's hard for you to picture what they're going to need as teenagers and even into their early 20s, as they might be staying home whilst they do tertiary study. So it definitely, obviously, the design detective aspect is super important. I've had members of our online program who will just spend time carrying around, we joke about it, a tape measure in their handbag and a notebook. And so the
Hmm.
tape measure is really good because it can be difficult as a layperson to walk into a space and actually understand what the dimensions of that space might be. And if it's feeling tight or constrained, what's driving that? And, feeling spacious, what's driving that? So I've had for example, one homeowner who was going and looking at display homes, and she had already thought that she needed a kitchen of a certain size. And so she went into these, she said to me, I'm going to go to these display homes. And I said, remember to take your tape measure. And she went and she was measuring these kitchens, and she said, these kitchens are enormous. And the one that I thought I needed is actually bigger than this. And it wasn't until she actually got the pragmatics of those dimensions, comparing them to each other, that she was able to sort of visualize that for herself and realize it wasn't what she actually needed. Equally, I think that the keeping the notebook is that opportunity that when you're actually having an experience. I had one member who, when she was standing out at the clothesline hanging up washing, realized that it wasn't working the way that she thought it could work most conveniently. And, when you're a busy person, you can forget those details very quickly, but she made sure that she just made a note of it so then it could go into her thoughts about her design process. I think also when you are designing your home, working with somebody who's experienced of working with a whole range of clients who have different life experiences and different family setups and different, priorities for their projects. And also they're still able to see how those homes work over time. I know I've had the benefit, obviously, of doing this for over 3 decades, that I've seen how clients have lived in their homes for, for very long periods, and you see what works and what doesn't work. And I've also worked inside companies where that information's been tracked over decades as well, and then informed future design. So when you can find the right professional to work with as well and have those right professionals on your team, you can tap into that expertise and expand what's possible for your own thinking and your own way of envisaging what your future might hold.
Very well said, Miss Amelia. Very well said indeed. And what are your short-term and long-term goals as an architect?
So Undercover Architect always began with a goal to really change the way that we design, build, and renovate our homes so that everybody can enjoy the process, not just the homeowner, but also the professionals that they're working with. And we can ultimately create homes that work both now and into the future and really are a fantastic use of resources. Building and renovating is a very resource consumptive process, not only from a time point of view and a money point of view, but also materials, waste production, all of those kinds of things. And the way that we build our homes, from the point of view of the materials that we choose, how we go about constructing them, and then how they use energy over a period of time, can have a massive impact on the planet and the planet's sustainability. And so I get really excited by what is possible when you educate homeowners about how they can create homes that are much more efficient, much more sustainable, don't need to be these big behemoths. In the US and in the States, Canada's not far behind. We build amongst the largest homes in the world, and they don't need to be that big. So oftentimes
Mm-hmm.
people have got spaces that are just storage areas, or that they never use, or that are only used for special occasions. And if instead we can have multifunctional homes that really work hard for us, where we're not wasting that effort, energy, and resources, then we can make a really big impact on the planet that we all live on. And ultimately, I think our homes actually serve us better long term. So for me, short term, obviously, I really want to help homeowners through the programs that we offer in Undercover Architect and what we do online generally through the education. Longer term, I really see this about changing the way that we live, so that, because I believe that our homes help us go out as the best version of ourselves every day. When your home works for you, it means that you can go out, you can be a great employee, great friend, great neighbor, great parent, all of those kinds of things, because you've got a home that restores and relaxes you every day and feels like it's yours. And when you know how to create a home like that, it really does become the launch pad for the rest of your life. And I get really excited by the idea of people living in homes that really work for them because of what it opens up for us personally.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Amelia. Looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
I don't know about being like me. I think that the best thing that you can do is actually find what makes you special and unique and bring that to the world, because the world definitely does need it more now than ever. I would encourage people to not confuse confidence with uncertainty. I think a lot of people wait to have certainty about something in order to feel confident about it. And I think that this happens whether you're building or renovating or doing most things in life. There's a lot of research that shows that people would rather be unhappy than be uncertain. And yet there's so much about our lives and so much if you're doing a custom project that you can't actually control. And so instead, if you can realize that confidence actually comes from you having clarity about your priorities, about what's important to you, about what you really want to achieve in your project. And it also comes from you having a familiarity with what the process involves so that you can understand the steps ahead, the questions to ask, the ways to actually understand how to pull the pieces and the people together for your project. And you can step into it then with a mindset that has resilience and flexibility, but feeling far more confident about what's lying ahead for you and your ability to navigate it.
Well, thank you for that advice, Miss Amelia. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
I can. There's actually two key books that I was thinking about with this question, Daniel, that I know I read at the beginning of Undercover Architect, and they really helped me understand how not only to build Undercover Architect, but also how to help homeowners in their projects. Of course, as an architect, I had read loads of architectural books. And then when I started my business, I started looking beyond architecture for ways that I could really work with people effectively and help them understand their projects and their project journey more effectively. One of the most significant books I read was The 80-20 Principle by Richard Koch, talking about how to look at the 20% of your input or the efforts that you make. What is that affects 80% of the outcome? And for me, I started to analyze my own career and where was the 20% that I was really seeing the 80% results. And for me, it was how I actually, a lot of my time as an architect was sitting at a drawing board or being on construction sites. But the 20% that I was doing was actually in supporting the homeowner in understanding what lay ahead and how to actually navigate it and what mindset they needed and how they could feel calmer about the whole thing. And for me, that was a really key learning to take into Undercover Architect and also to help homeowners understand where's the 20% that you need to focus on so that you're actually getting the 80% results. And for them, it was really about that work on getting clear up front about what they wanted their project to look like, what their priorities were, and how they were going to navigate it more confidently. The other book is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. For me, that's a fantastic book when thinking about how do you navigate a noisy world and really get clear on what are your priorities, how are you going to create intentionality about your project and about the things that you do generally, and how are you going to then use those as a guide to be able to then dismiss the things that are really just noise and will confuse the process and mean that you don't actually create a home that reflects you authentically. So those would be my two book recommendations.
Thank you for the recommended books, Miss Amelia. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, how can people document or celebrate the journey, not just the result, in a way that honors the effort and becomes a part of the home story?
Oh, that's a great question. And it is so important to celebrate the journey because as I said
Mm-hmm.
up front, this can sometimes be years in the making and
Yes.
it's a marathon, not a sprint, and it can feel relentless at times. So we encourage our members in Home Method to really document their journey in a variety of ways. And it depends whether you want to go analog or digital. But it can be really fun, obviously, to run a social media account where you share updates that you might just have a close circle of friends that are seeing your project progress as it goes. It can also obviously be in pulling together a photo album of the things that you do. One of the things that we get our members is every Friday we get them to share their wins for the week. And I think it's really important. Your wins can be big or small. It could be something really massive, like you've signed a contract with a builder or a general contractor. Or it could be very small insofar as you finally decided over that you're going to choose, one tile over another. And so for me, those small wins actually help build up that incremental momentum that is really needed to sustain your attention and energy throughout your project. And then obviously you've got the opportunity that as you are moving through to construction, that you can do that much more regular documentation. I encourage homeowners, they need to be able to attend site weekly. That will need to be cleared with your builder or your contractor before you sign your contract, that you're actually going to have access to site on a weekly basis, and documenting the progress with photographs and notes and things like that is really important as that progresses, not only from an enjoyment point of view, but also from a record keeping point of view as well.
Well, very well said, Miss Amelia. Very well said. a year after moving in, what is the real indicator that someone started with clarity and confidence? Is it that they on budget, or they love their home, or they do it again?
It's a combination of factors, and it's the conversation I love having with our members, because oftentimes it is that thing, I would do this all over again. I'm actually quite disappointed that this is our long-term home because this was so much fun. And I think anybody at the beginning of their project can think, the mind boggles that it's possible to feel like that, you know. But it is when you do the project with an understanding of what's coming ahead, you get that support, you get that guidance, and you get that education. You can be really empowered to enjoy your project. It doesn't mean it's not going to be without its challenges, but what I see is actually what you become in the process is an incredible journey as well, because you can rise to the challenge of that and transform your own ability to handle things like that as well. I think too, one of the things that I love hearing homeowners say is when they've got it right in terms of understanding what the site needed for how to be designed so that it was energy efficient. It really maximizes the movement of the sun, shades the home when it needs to, allows the warmth of the sun in when it needs to. You know, all of these kinds of things. It works with the natural assets of the site. They're often talking then about how great the home feels, that the light does what it's supposed to, what they envisaged, and that it's been really cost effective in terms of their artificial heating and cooling bills as well. So you can have these kind of conversations of feelings and emotions about what they actually achieved and how proud they are, and it looks better than they expected, and it's functioning better than they anticipated, and it's doing all of the things that they hoped and dreamed it would. And then you can have some really pragmatic things of, oh, it's actually really low maintenance and it's super durable, and there's, you know, the storage has worked out really well, and our energy bills are really cost effective, and, you know, we're really enjoying how this space works and this space works because we've had all our friends over and everybody fits, and, you know, all of those kinds of things. So I love seeing it from both that emotional and that pragmatic side in terms of that outcome.
Yes, and indeed. And Miss Amelia, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please don't listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in a sixth season, abstract poetry in third season, and my book 101 review in sixth season as well. Comedy 101 in third season, and my food 101 in sixth season as well. Geography 101 love letters. Movie 101 review, music 101 our fifth season, Science 101, Sex 101, and fourth season, and Trivia 101, Law 101, Mental Health 101, Motivation 101, Entrepreneurship 101, and of course, my Bible verses 101 are my baby podcasts. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Amelia, if you could give one piece of a counterintuitive advice to someone starting a blank piece of paper, dreaming of their projects but frozen by the complexity, what would it be?
I would encourage you to remember that you actually unlock what's possible for your future home. A lot of people feel like they just need to outsource their agency. They need to hand over responsibility, that it's just all about finding the right person and then everything else will get taken care of. And they're trying to rearrange squares and rectangles on a page to try and sort of get that started. Instead, remember that it's your vision, your money, your choices, your decisions. That's what actually make this whole project happen. So get yourself educated and empowered, and you'll feel far more confident as you dive into your project and start working with people.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Miss Amelia, for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your project, your business, or anything you want to promote on Book 101?
Thanks so much for having me, Daniel. You can find us at undercoverarchitect.com. We've also got our podcast, Get It Right with Undercover Architect, wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Amelia Lee, because if you support her, for sure, more and more empowering advocacy like this to rise. So, Miss Amelia, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. It's been great to be here.
Welcome, people. See you soon.